Welcome to Under the Ring Pro Wrestling Conversations. My name is Phil Strum. Thank you so much for joining me today. I'm pretty excited to say that my guest today is the total package made in the USA, Lex Luger. If you haven't heard from Lex Luger in a while, he's now one of the most positive people that I can think of. He's got a new podcast with ad-free shows called Lex Expressed, where he answers questions and talks about his career with Conrad Thompson and the fans. We got to cover pretty much all of it today with Lex, from Florida to WCW to WWE, back to WCW, all the way to today, where he says he's now a pro wrestling fan for the first time. So here we go with my talk with the total package, Lex Luger. So honored to be joined today by one of the biggest stars in professional wrestling of the last several decades, the one and only, the total package, Lex Luger. Lex, welcome to Under the Ring Pro Wrestling Conversations. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you. Glad to be here. Appreciate it.
So let's get started with what's going on with you right now. Lex Luger is in the podcast game. Your new show, Lex Expressed, has premiered on ad-free shows with Conrad Thompson. What has that scenario been like for you to talk about your life and your career in that format?
Wow. I never thought I'd be involved. When podcasts first started coming out, I was like, what's a podcast? And then all my friends started getting the guys I worked in the industry with, and they all started doing podcasts. And I enjoyed listening to them, but I never imagined myself having a podcast. But when ad-free shows contact me, I'm personal friends with Conrad. He wanted me to do a monthly show. You already said titled Lex Expressed, where it'd be interactive with the fans. They could come on live and ask questions. Because as an ambassador for WWE, and when we do promotional things out with the fans, it's a much more personal experience. And as a side note, wrestling fans are special. They have things memorized from your career, your matches, and this pay-per-view, and they have some really good questions. They're all kind of looking for that behind-the-scenes insight, and with a podcast, you can kind of really get into that. So I think it's a great outreach for the fans as kind of a tribute to them as well. So when Conrad, to make a long story short, when Conrad Thompson from ad-free shows contacted me about doing one, I was like, well, he's the Bentley of wrestling podcasts. So if he wants me to do a monthly thing that I can interact with the fans, that's great. They have a Q&A mailbag. So we're just going to have a lot of fun with it. So I'm looking forward to it. We just did our first one in October, and we're going to do like a monthly with that as part of their content package.
That sounds like a lot of fun. What's your relationship been like with the fans when you're doing this, or even when you're out at, say, like a New York Comic-Con as you were recently too? Like what's it like for you to get out there and interact with the folks like that?
Man, it's like the word always popped in my head, special. When I was wrestling, I was a wrestler, but I wasn't a wrestling fan. I know that sounds kind of crazy, but I was a football player and grew up in what I would call, in my term, traditional sports. Mm-hmm. And I didn't grow up watching pro wrestling. And when the opportunity came and I decided to give pro wrestling a shot, I just took off. I thought the wrestling fans are crazy. They follow you around. They chase you to the elevators. I was like, oh my gosh, what's with these wrestling fans? But I've like come full circle, and now that I'm an ambassador, retired, I've got to meet the fans more up close and personal that I never had the opportunity while I was wrestling. And I've cried with people, laughed with them, fans at some of these events like the New York Comic-Con I watched with my grandfather, and my memory, I was at the U.S. I had a guy this weekend, past weekend, I was at the U.S. Intrepid with my grandfather, and he's not with me anymore. He started crying, and I started kind of tearing up. And so I guess my point is I'm able to now double back. I'm now a wrestling fan, along with we're like a family. And so when I do these appearances, and now that I have the opportunity of this podcast, it's kind of really interacting with your family, because once again, wrestling fans are one of a kind. They're very unique, and they're very loyal, and they're avid, and they're it's just I've come full circle on it all, and it's just a wonderful experience.
Whoop. Oh, there you go. And you learn too, like how much you mean to them at this point of your life. Are you kind of an open book? Is it nice to relive your career kind of in this way?
Yeah, I've had a real change in my life, in my faith, my walk with the Lord. So I try to be an open book and be very transparent with people, and try to be authentic as I can possibly be. I think if you're open with people like that, I think they're the same way with you, I found. So I think it makes everything better. So yeah, I definitely, people, well, should I stay away from this when I interview, or when the fans come, do you mind if I ask you about such and such or this? You go, no, man, go ahead. Ask me whatever you want. So yeah, I definitely an open book on when it comes to the Q&A and the interaction with the fans, for sure. And they know that about me now.
Yeah. What's the biggest positive you take away in your life nowadays after the initial partial paralysis you had from the spinal stroke? What is life like now for Lex Luger? I mean, you seem like one of the most positive people I've seen. So just what's the biggest positive in your life these days?
Well, part of it up front was I was never supposed to be partially paralyzed. I'm what they call a high function quadriplegic. I have some challenges mobility wise, but I can live independently and feed and bathe myself. I was not supposed to be able to do anything. I can drive my own car and live independently. So it's really a miracle of God that I can do what I can do and make these appearances that I do and fly around by myself and get on and off the airplane. I wasn't supposed to do any of that. So that
Wow.
alone makes you so grateful that it's hard not to have a positive outlook on life. That in and of itself. And I kind of look at big picture. Um, I feel like I was kind of streamlined and redefined. I was always about the physical Lex. I kind of talk about mind, body, and spirit when I give motivational or inspirational talks. And I was kind of one dimensional. I was all about the physical,
Mhm.
a little bit about the mental. I read a lot of positive mental attitude books and everything, and Jim Rohn, a lot of that stuff, which gave me like worldly success in wrestling and in the business world. But I was spiritually dead, and I feel so much more balanced now in my walk with the Lord that I find that my spinal cord injury, which would have, a lot of my friends said, man, how do you deal with that? You were like one of the strongest, best built guys on the planet, and now you lost 100 pounds of muscle. And you're in a wheelchair to walker a lot of the time. And how do you deal with that? I'm like, man, I, I feel like I've been streamlined, redefined, and I've been pruned so I can be more useful. I kind of had to get if this makes any sense at all, I had to kind of get the old Lex out of the way, which was very one dimensional and kind of almost one of my nicknames was the narcissist. I was kind of narcissistic about getting to the gym and doing my cardio and looking at myself in the mirror and getting to the tanning bed. With that kind of out of the way, not that I still don't go to the gym, I still do, but uh, it was kind of a really unbalanced, lopsided way to live.
Mhm.
So I feel like the spinal cord injury, I think was not almost, it was really turned out big picture to be a blessing in disguise, if that makes any sense with what I just told you.
Oh, it's
Yeah.
great to hear and great to see you doing so well and positive and stuff. One thing I cracked up, and I think you posted this on Twitter, but you reshared a video at one point of a cat jumping out of its cage, and you compared it to your infamous match with Bruiser Brody, with
Oh
you
my
getting
God.
out of the cage. And at that moment, I kind of realized, all right, this Lex Luger is probably loving life right now, and he
No
totally gets
doubt.
it and appreciates what he's accomplished in his career on a different level. Because that was always one of those moments in wrestling where people were like, "What happened there?" And
Oh my
I'm
God.
I'm watching this cat jump out. I'm like, yeah, that's pretty much what it is.
Well, everybody asked me like, what's the number one question you get most of the time on Q&As and stuff? I go, because most of the guys go, well, what was your favorite guy to work with, or your most memorable match? Or I'm like, well, I had almost 5,000 matches, but mine's always, what happened with Bruiser Brody in the cage? So yeah, it was quite the scary moment. I was my first year wrestling, so yeah, I'm real honest about it. a wife and a brand new little baby at home. And I had this crazy looking monster in the cage with razor blades on his fingers, and he stopped working, and the ref was experienced. He didn't know what was going on. So yeah, I was scared, man. And when they couldn't open the cage door, I'll go, I'm getting out of here.
Oh my goodness. What's
Yeah.
when you were breaking into the business in Florida after your football career was over, who were some of the people you were leaning on to learn things about pro wrestling?
Well, I had a great guy. His name was Hiro Matsuda. He's infamous for breaking Hulk Hogan's leg when he was goofing off in training to be
Hmm.
a wrestler. But he trained Mr. Wonderful, Paul Orndorff, Hogan, a lot of the biggest stars, and never had a school where he benefited monetarily. He was intrinsically in love with wrestling and provided well for him and his family. He was from Japan, a judo champion and a legit athlete. He did everything with you when he trained you, all the push-ups and Hindu squats, and he got in the ring with you. And what an amazing guy. When I look back, I really miss him, but he mentored me at the beginning of my career. He watched over me, protected me that first year in wrestling before I moved on to the Crockett's and the NWA, which became WCW and then WWE. But he was a huge part of my early career and success. And of course, I tell people there would not be a Lex Luger. We wouldn't be doing this interview right now if it wasn't for Ric Flair.
Wow.
He has a unique quality. Not only is he a cultural icon and just a fun guy to be around, but just charisma plus. But he had a special quality as a big star. He could his career is, I mean, all the world tells you, but he had a special quality. He was a star maker. Sting, one of my best friends in wrestling, and also he's had a great career, says the same thing I do. Ric Flair put us on the map. You wouldn't know Sting. He admits it, and you wouldn't know, ever heard of a Lex Luger if it wasn't for Ric Flair and the way he interviews and works me in the ring. He made people believe that we were big stars. He brings you up to his level. That's a very unique gift and quality that Ric Flair has. So that's another name. That's a good question you just asked me that comes to mind right off the bat. I thought about who helped me and brought me along early on my career, for sure. Those are the first two names that really pop into my head on that question.
That's great. I wonder with Matsuda too, if your background in football and in athletics probably made you a good kind of student for him, just because you were probably pretty coachable, and that's what he was doing, right? I mean,
Yeah, I mean, he and I were like two peas in the pod. Like when he would do push-ups with you or Hindu squats, they call them everything, and he turned the air conditioning off in this Tampa, Florida in the summer garment factory he ran. It'd be like 120 degrees in there. He'd do everything. When you finish your set of 30 reps on the push-up, he'd push you out of the way to do his 30. Then I'd start pushing him out of the way to do my 30 reps.
wow.
And we do like 10 sets of 30 nonstop. And then we come do the Hindu squats and he'd do it all with you. But we both loved a challenge. From my football and background, I always loved working out in the gym. I was able to train under a world champion powerlifter who just passed recently, Don Reinhardt. Who
Mhm.
trained me and two of my teammates in high school. All went on to have pro football careers. Um, I got to train with some of the best strength coaches, a world champion powerlifter. So all that went into. Matsuda brought me into the ring and put me out for my first match. I was the fastest guy, he told me, that he ever put into a ring and had a live match on television.
Wow.
It was just over 3 months. Usually, he didn't even let him out of the sweat box at the garment factory for at least 6 months.
Wow, that's
So,
great. And
yeah,
I was pretty young, but I remember the angle pretty vividly when Ole Anderson was booted out of the Four Horsemen for being what Tully Blanchard referred to as an
yeah, we beat
outsider.
him up in the broom closet.
Right. And then he was
Oh, yeah.
replaced by you. And, what an opportunity for you so early on. That's probably, I think that's the first time I saw you was 86 was in Crockett. What was your relationship with those guys like? And what was it like being a member of the Four Horsemen?
Well, I knew Rick because Rick had come down to Florida and he discovered me. He wanted to bring me in, and so once again, I wouldn't be a Lex Luger without a Ric Flair. I wrestled an hour Broadway I don't know how he did that with me down in Florida. I didn't even know hardly how to lace my boots up. That's how talented Rick is. And with the Horseman opportunity, I'll be honest with you, had such limited exposure to wrestling. My first wrestling match I ever went to was my debut.
Wow.
That's how little experience I had with pro wrestling coming out of football. When I went to the Horsemen to become a Horseman, everybody in Florida was telling me, man, you're going to be a Horseman. Oh, my, big deal. The only guy I knew in the Horsemen was Rick. If you had showed me a picture of a bunch of different guys, I couldn't have picked out Tully Blanchard, Arn Ole, or any of the Horsemen other than Rick or J.J. Dillon, the manager. I had no idea who they were.
Wow.
So going back to our original beginning of our talk, I was a wrestler, but not a wrestling fan. Now it's amazing how God brought me full circle. Now I'm like a fanboy. I love wrestling, and I follow the podcast and the wrestling shows now, and I'm like a big fan. So it's an incredible journey for me with wrestling, for sure.
That's great. Let's talk about Sting. When did you first meet Sting? Did you hit it off with him right away? You guys seemed like inseparable in the ring. And what about your friendship makes it work so well?
We are both inside and outside of the ring. We have a similar journey. We're both followers of Jesus now, and that makes it extra special for us as well. He never gave up on me, even during the worst times of my life. He'd leave voicemails for me when I wouldn't answer the phone. I went through a bad period of addictions with sex and drugs and alcohol, and people thought I was going to be the next wrestler found dead. Stinger never gave up on me, and we're best of friends to this day. He's a special guy and a special friend. But we did not hit it off the first time we talked. He was asking me about my nutrition on the road, and I blew him off and told him what do you eat to stay in shape like you do on the road? Because he came from a bodybuilding background, right. And I didn't look up. I was after a match, and I was unlacing my boots. I didn't look up at him, and I said, I was like thought it was a big deal with the Force, and I said, Stolies and peanut M&Ms. I eyeballed him out of the corner. He walked away shaking his head, but we ended up seeing each other downstairs on the road at the hotels, like having breakfast and stuff. And we'd sit at separate tables. Finally, we had breakfast together. Finally, we started going to the gym together, palling around. We just, over time, became best of friends. So thank goodness he gave me a second chance from our initial intro in our conversation. My gosh, talk about cocky and arrogant. Oh my gosh, we laugh about it now. Wow.
And how about him still in the ring 38 years later?
I think it's fantastic, and it's also incredible. My goodness.
Yeah. So in addition to Flair and Sting in that time period, I could think of so many people you had some fun matches with in that range. Ricky the Dragon Steamboat, Barry Windham, Stan Hansen. Were you able to enjoy that time of your career appropriately at the time, or do you kind of look back on it now and kind of realize, like, wow, like these were some great wrestlers I was in there with?
I appreciated it because I was working with all the top guys and making top money. And I appreciate that aspect of when I'm looking back now. I got to work with basically every wrestling legend and top guy in my era, like nonstop for 15 years, like main event stuff. When I look back now, I'm like, goodness gracious, what an opportunity I was given. I got to work with all the best guys. Amazing.
I enjoyed you and Steamboat quite a bit. I thought you guys were a good matchup.
He taught me how to call a match.
Really?
Meaning, I always was led by matches by guys like Rick and everything. They held my hand and called the whole match in the ring. Because people don't realize back when we wrestled, we didn't go over the whole match. We talk about a couple of things, and then we go out there and you kind of talk through it in the ring and ad lib based on the playing off the crowd and what you thought they might want to see. That takes experience. So the more experienced guy always called the match. So I never learned how to call a match in there. And Ricky Steamboat, he's like, I call him the teacher. He started with me and called the whole match. I had like a 7-month program with him, which they don't have anymore. So what an opportunity. I had like a 7-month program with him for the U.S. title. And he called the whole match for the first month. Then the second month, he'd have me call like the beginning of the match. Then he'd have me call the middle part of the match. Then he'd have me call the beginning, the middle, then the comeback or the finish of the match towards the end. Then finally at a pay-per-view, he goes, Lex, we had a big pay-per-view in Baltimore. He goes, I'm going to have you call the whole match, including all the way up through the finish. I go, but Ricky, you want me to call your comeback when he was the good guy where he shines at the end of the match?
Right.
He goes, I want you to call the whole thing.
Wow.
Man, I was like on cloud 9. I took a slam off the top, things I'd never done in the ring before because I wanted to have such a great match for Ricky and him allowing me to call the whole match. I was so excited, but I was like a little kid. In a candy store, I'm going to call the entire match in a pay-per-view for the U.S. title with Ricky the Dragon Steamboat. So, but he, as you can see, he took me bit by bit. And after each match, he'd sit down with me for Ms. Lex. When you did that suplex, then you picked me up and slammed me right afterwards. Don't do a big suplex, then follow it up with like just a body slam. He would teach me things after each match and go over match what was good and what wasn't and how I could improve. That's why I call him the teacher. And I'm to this day very thankful. And I tell Ricky that all the time when we get together. We're at autograph session. Go, man, Rick, you're the first guy to ever taught me and worked with me and taught me how to call a match. So, Ricky's an incredible guy. He really is.
Yeah, and they were great matches too. So congratulations on that. So
hey, it's hard to have a bad match with Ricky the Dragon Steamboat.
That's probably a good point.
Yeah.
So going to the WWF from NWA, first, of course, you went to the WBF and did the bodybuilding thing. What was it like for you to create with people like Vince McMahon and Bobby Heenan and Kurt Hennig and those kind of guys?
Well, I was very excited to go to WWF. I kind of felt like they were the number one company at the time. So I really looked forward to the opportunity. So, yeah, I got to do my opening WrestleMania match at Caesar's Palace outdoors with Mr. Perfect Kurt Hennig, which is funny. He forgot the match when we got in the ring. And I thought he was ribbing me, but he had too much caffeine or something. And I thought he's known to be a ribber. We locked up in the ring. He goes, what are we doing? What are we doing? I go, oh, come on, Kurt. And I thought I had a night off because I'm in the ring with Mr. Perfect, one of the premier workers of our era. And he wasn't kidding. He had forgotten the match we kind of had set up. He was looking for me. So I had to lead the match. And that really threw me for a loop. I'm telling you, but just, I don't mean to get sidetracked on that, but yeah, just a great opportunity to work with the company. And I'm still with them now. I'm an ambassador with WWE, and they put us in the video games. They do a kind of interview stuff with us behind the scenes for the legends and the A&E specials and all the stuff that we do behind the scenes on camera and on the Peacock Network. And they they still bring out action figures on us and kind of keep us current with the fans. And one of the great things about the appearances they send us out on, the dads will come up with their kids who watch the current guys. So this is who I watch, and the kids already know who you are from the video games and the matches they can watch on us, the old school matches we had on Peacock and on YouTube. And so it's really cool. It really is.
That's great. Did you feel more comfortable as the narcissist or as Made in the USA Lex Luger? I don't know if you just caught that. Did you feel more comfortable as narcissist or Made in the USA Lex Luger?
Probably narcissist, because back then, ask anybody, that fit my real life personality a little bit more. Like we talked about earlier about me wanting to get to the gym and tan and preen in front of the mirror. That came naturally to me. I was definitely in love with myself back then.
Were you surprised to get the call to body slam Yokozuna?
Yeah, it was a shock. I thought the bus tour was just going to be just for that match. I was going to go back to being just Lex Luger, but Vince is all in, man. He wanted me to do the bus tour and be Mr. Made in USA and the whole thing. So it was, looking back, it was a great experience. The every appearance was slammed and lines everywhere, and they did a really good job on that tour. And that the moment on the USS Intrepid is definitely one of the highlights of my career. The setup and the helicopter and the surprise entry and the way only Vince McMahon and W can do something like that. it was really a very, very cool moment and one of the highlights of my career when I slammed Yoko on the USS Intrepid.
Do you think WWE could have done more with you, or were you satisfied with what you were able to accomplish over there?
Well, I worked with all the top talent there.
Mm-hmm.
Once again, a lot of people felt like maybe with the big build up to SummerSlam. Funny side note: right before SummerSlam, they had like a Hollywood guy travel with me on the bus, like as my public relations guy or tour director.
Mm-hmm.
When he heard I wasn't going to win because of the big buildup, because oh man, your career's dead. Your career's over. If you don't win this, they're not going to put the belt on you. I go, no. He goes, your career's over. I go, well, thanks a lot. That's a great thought going into SummerSlam. I'm not winning the belt there, but they're going to release the balloons out of the ceiling like you did win, and that my career's over because I didn't come through. Fortunately, he was wrong.
Yeah.
I ended up going on to the Monday Night Wars and having a nice finish to my career until 01. But a lot of fans thought that maybe they should have put the belt on me there, even if they took it back off me. So I showed the result and came through for the fans. I was always, Matsuda always taught me to be a good foot soldier, so I never questioned. People go, were you promised the belt and they changed their mind? No, I was never promised the belt by Vince. I was very close with Vince, very good friends with him. We used to train together at the gym. If he wanted to put the belt on me, the plan all along was to make it special and do it at WrestleMania 10. Mm-hmm. He went with Brett at Mania 10, but I was never promised the belt in the first place. I was just glad to be, really, I'll be honest with you, I was always very confident. I was always glad to be in the main event mix. And whether I had the belt or not, I always thought of myself. I never lacked confidence as a main event guy. Mm-hmm. So Eric Bischoff, who was my boss at WCW during the Monday Night War, said, what about Lex in his career? He goes, well, I'll tell you one thing about Lex. He always thought he was I won't say the word he used, the stuff.
Yeah.
And he goes, he made other people believe him. So I never lacked confidence during my career. That kind of comes across on camera and to the fans, was Eric's point. Yeah. And so if I thought I was a big deal, then the fans thought I was a big deal. If I thought I was a main event guy, the fans believed it. So that kind of was, when I look back at WWE, would I have stayed there longer? Maybe. But I had an opportunity to go back to WCW and be with my friend Sting for the Monday Night Wars and do that walkout at the Mall of America. And I thought that was a great opportunity. So, it worked out pretty well.
And I was going to mention, the match with you and Hulk Hogan, getting Hulk Hogan up in the human torture rack and winning the WCW on the live Nitro. Man. I don't think people totally get it now, but that was one of the biggest live TV matches ever.
That was the 100th anniversary of Nitro. And I didn't find out I was going to get the title. Hogan was our hot red. The whole NWA was on fire. They left us laying every weekend for like over a year and got stuff thrown at him. And I'd be laying in the ring laid out by them. I get covered in nachos and beer. And they had a lot, we call it heat, man. And Hogan was red hot as a heel. Whoever thought that red and yellow become the hottest heel, maybe one ever in wrestling. And they wanted to keep it a secret. So the referee and I, Pee Wee, found out. You see his reaction when he rang the bell.
Yep.
We didn't find out almost until right before we went in the ring that we were going to switch the bell.
Yeah. What a great moment.
The crowd didn't think so either. There was if you watch the crowd, listen to it, there's almost a delayed, well, they're going to DQ it. Or when they found out, when the ring filled up with the WCW guys, they realized we had switched the belt. I'd won the title live on Nitro, which is never normally done. The crowd, and funny, ironic, that was where I didn't win the belt, same building at SummerSlam.
Interesting.
Full circle, right?
Yeah, totally. Are you at peace now with people who might have been angry with you during your career? And how do you approach that when you hear it and when you deal with it nowadays?
Angry with some of the out of the ring stuff, Elizabeth and stuff like that.
Which is anything.
Understandable. And I find in life that people are going to believe what they want to believe or feel they want to feel, and I'm not going to invalidate their feelings. I just try to be the best Lex now that I can be each and every day. I think each day is a gift, and I try to be the best I can, and I understand some of their feelings, and I just keep on stepping.
All right, we're going to move on to something we call the 3 count now. It's going to be 3 quick questions and your answers. So, first question, I've always wondered this. Was there any particular reason that the most put together guy in wrestling was wearing a huge flowing white shirt when he walked out at one Monday Nitro at the Mall of America?
Well, I came from Canada on the road with WWE, and my clothing was limited, so they wanted me and I normally just bought wrestling gear and workout clothes on the trips. That was about the only shirt I had in my bag. I flew in for that, and I had to pull it out. The rest is history.
It's still so memorable. On a side note, my other favorite moment with you,
the big white shirt with the Nehru collar. Oh my gosh!
My other Lex Luger related shirt thing that I liked was you getting you facing the really tight shirt on that one internet video that went out years ago about you getting stuck in your shirt or whatever it was with Billy What's his name.
And I'm cussing up a storm now that I'm a Christian born again believer. They show that virally still. They love that.
Yeah,
a little bit of the old Lex. Oh my gosh.
Second question, anything stand out for you from your first WrestleMania at Caesar's Palace or your first Starrcade, which I think was the first WCW pay-per-view back in '87? Anything stand out from those two shows?
Which Starrcade are you referring to?
Dusty. I think you faced Dusty in the first one in '87.
Was that when he won the U.S. title?
Yeah.
Oh, in Chicago. Yeah, that was great. Yeah, I went to bring JJ slid the steel chair, I think, for me to use on Dusty, and he ended up DDT me on the chair and pinning me 1, 2, 3. That was a great match. Just to be in the ring with Dusty. Dusty was so instrumental. Another guy who was, man, I can't believe I left him out. Dusty. He gave me my nickname, the Total Package. He gave me the Torture Rack finish. He was a creative genius. He had a huge impact on my career early on.
Very
so
good.
To be in the ring with him, just and that match was just fabulous. And then the first, are you talking about the first WrestleMania?
First WrestleMania was at Caesars. You mentioned the match, but anything else stand out for you from that experience?
Well, just the grandeur of WrestleMania. I mean, before I got into wrestling, I saw those guys, Andre the Giant, Hulk Hogan, and the WrestleManias, and it's definitely a huge deal. So definitely fond memories, even though Kurt forgot the match when we locked up. Just being a part of that and kind of the kickoff to my career with them, definitely great memories of that for sure.
And then the last question, is today's Lex Luger the most total package that you've ever been emotionally, spiritually?
That's the great. I get that all the time when I speak, like I do inspiration. Go, Lex, you're the total package now. Before you were just mentally and physically. Now you're the total package. You love other people. You love Jesus. You still love wrestling. They go, now you're the total package. I go, well, thank you. I appreciate that. So, yeah, definitely. I get that a lot.
That's interesting. I thought I was going to be the first one to say it, but
I get that all the time now, which is fabulous. Thank you.
That's fantastic. Well, Lex, thank you. I've really enjoyed this. Thank you so much for joining me today on Under the Ring Pro Wrestling Conversations. It's a real treat to see how well you're doing and all the things that you're doing outside the ring now at this point in your life. And it's been a real pleasure to talk to you.
Thank you. Great interview. I really enjoyed it. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thanks again, everyone, for joining me today on Under the Ring Pro Wrestling Conversations. I want to thank Lex Luger for joining me today. I'd also like to thank Derek Kukulich and Evan Polisher and Ad Free Shows for making this happen today. Check back on Twitter at Under the Ring and on Threads at PJ Strum for all the latest information on guests, and have a great week, everyone.